Hello everyone. Today is the 1st of March. It's around 2:30 in the afternoon, I think. Getting a later start today than I would have liked, but that's okay. The big news I have for today is I have my new carburetor. I've had it for a while, but it's been at my mechanic shop because what he did, and I asked him to do, was to move this inlet port from this side to this side. Well, actually to add it. I mean, that's still there. In fact, I need to either find a plug for it or I may just temporarily cap this off with a hose clamp or get a piece of hose that fits over there better. I'll just temporarily seal that off that way. But I wanted this on this side. This new carburetor is just a generic thing made in China. It's not an Edelbrock, but it is a 1406 model, generic model. It's a 600 CFM carburetor, brand new. So I'm hoping the engine will run a lot better with this. But this took a while because he had to buy the die to cut the threads, and he had to be careful to drill the hole just right. It's got this adjustable float adjustments right here on both sides, which the old carburetor didn't have. Plus the little windows there to see the float level. So all I have to do now is install this on the car, and we'll crank her up and see how it goes. Something else I got recently too, minor stuff, but hard to come by these days. A pair of brand new old Trico wiper blade refills. So I'll be cleaning up the window glass on this car and putting these on pretty soon. These look like they've been sitting on the shelf for many years, and it was a closeout thing. I should have got four. I don't know why I only got two, but I guess because I figure I'm not really going to be driving the car in the rain uh, ever, or very, very rarely. So they'll last a while. The gas tank. Oh, I bought a. I forgot to. Did I bring it with me? No, I didn't bring it with me. I bought a hygrometer. I think that's how you say it. Hygrometer. Hygrometer. It measures relative humidity. I've never had one before, but since the gas tank sealer is sensitive to the amount of humidity in terms of how quickly it cures, the higher the humidity, the faster it will cure, which is not a good thing necessarily because if it cures too fast, it'll trap moisture and it'll bubble and it'll ruin the sealing compound. So I got one of those in the shed right now. I'm going to keep an eye on it. I was surprised because the KBS Coatings told me that I could have a reading as high as 85% relative humidity, which is pretty humid, I thought. And they said that would be okay. So I was thinking it would be no higher than 70, but they said 85%. But I'm still hoping to keep it more around 70 or less in that shed. I I'm more concerned now about the temperature because even though the temp's starting Sunday afternoon, which is when I'm targeting to seal that tank, because it's supposed to be like 60 degrees that afternoon and then stay warmer for the next 2 or 3 days with some rain coming again later on. Um, but overnight the temperatures will dip into the 40s, and you're not supposed to go below 55 with that sealer for it to cure properly. So I'm trying to come up with a way to keep it warm enough in a section of the shed that I have with a portable heater. So I'm still working on that. But in the meantime, today I'm going to install this carburetor and we're going to crank her up and see how she runs. All right, I have two issues already right from the get-go. The carburetor, of course, fits on the intake manifold just fine, but there's two issues. Number one, the my original accelerator link, I don't think is going to be quite long enough. I'm not sure yet until I mount the plate and hook the springs up. I'm not sure it's going to actually reach the hole over here or not. If it doesn't, then I'm going to have to figure out a way to make a custom link there to connect the accelerator pedal. The other thing I noticed, and I've seen this before from other people's videos, using the stock setup here doesn't work with the intake manifold. I'm gonna have to change that to a bolt with just a head on it instead of the stud with a nut on the end of it like that, because the carburetor is hitting it right now with the linkage down there, which obviously is not going to work. So I'll remove the carburetor again and replace that stud with a regular bolt and continue on. All right, the carburetor's now locked down with the new studs. I really like those studs. They're the perfect length. Got those at AutoZone. Got my choke hooked up, and I am reusing I forget what they call it now, that variable thermistor thing or whatever that affects the ground and how the choke works and everything. So I'm going to use that. I don't think it'll hurt anything. It might help. This is how I capped off this other port, the original one that came on the carburetor. I just put a hose clamp. Ooh, I'm glad I did this because I haven't tightened the the nut on that yet. I completely forgot about that fitting, so I got to tighten that real quick. And I got to tighten this also because of how I bent the tube to force it in there on the original carburetor. I had to loosen the carburetor on the mounting studs, lift it up a little bit so I could get the thread started on that fitting there for the gas line. The other thing I'm running into, this rod appears to be just a bit short. Now I can hook it in there. The problem is when I do, it pulls it away even more on the fast idle cam, which is going to mean the engine's probably going to race a little bit too fast when it's in the when the choke is applied. Um, it may also affect idle speed. I don't know. I noticed the rod looks like it might actually have been bent in the past a little bit, so it may be artificially shorter than it should be for some reason. So I got to fiddle around with that before I'm satisfied, because it should just fit in that hole without doing anything special. I shouldn't have to. It shouldn't pull the throttle back like that at all. So it's pretty close. So it shouldn't take too much to make it work. So I'm still working on that. And I used my magic little tool again that Brian recommended to me. Man, this thing is wonderful. It makes these springs so much easier to install. That used to be such a pain in the butt. Also have to hook up my vacuum advance for the distributor. I believe it goes right here. I think this might be manifold vacuum, where I believe this is, what they call it, port vacuum. I'm not sure, but I think that's where the vacuum line is supposed to go for the distributor vacuum advance. Back here where that plug is, that's where my AC solenoid would normally mount. But since I don't have an air conditioning compressor in the car right now, I'm not going to bother with that right now. I'll just leave the plug sitting here unplugged and worry about that some future year when I actually try to get the air conditioning working in this car. So pretty close, pretty close. And in case I forgot to mention it, I did replace that stud with a regular bolt there, so now that clears the carburetor linkage on the bottom on the passenger side. Switching gears for just a second here. This is my hygrometer and thermometer. It's actually in better shape out here than I imagined it would be. It's almost 51 degrees, and it's not that warm today actually. And it's 35% relative humidity, so that's not too far below what it needs to be to pour the sealer in that gas tank. So that looks promising. We'll see what it's tomorrow afternoon, because tonight and tomorrow morning it's going to rain. So I imagine that relative humidity is going to go up a lot, but the temperature is also going to rise. So my goal, again, like I said earlier, is hopefully tomorrow afternoon I'll be able to pour the sealer in the tank and then somehow keep it warm enough in here and dry enough in here for it to cure properly. Now, back to the carburetor. It turns out this is the old linkage that I took off. It was indeed bent, which is why it wasn't fitting the carburetor correctly. I put the other one that I had from the cruise control unit that I brought with me, or bought from Brian when I was in Kentucky, so it has a nice straight one, so I put that on there. My problem now is that would have been easier to show you on the carburetor, but I don't have a way of keeping this part in the carburetor linkage. The design is different than the original carburetor, so I can't use the original locking clip that was on there. So I'm going to have to go to the auto parts store and get one of those washer looking things that will lock that in place. So temporarily I'll probably just use a vacuum fitting that fits on there tightly to keep it from sliding out of the linkage temporarily. So anyway, almost ready to start the car. So back at the car, this part here is different on the new carburetor. So you can't use this original clip to hold that in place. But you can see with this nice straight rod here, it fits on the hole perfectly, just like it's supposed to. What's also interesting is the old cruise control connection point, because the other rod was bent. Now I have to adjust it, because I don't remember how to do that. I may just need to put that on the other side of that housing there to get that to fit in the hole properly before I lock that back in place. But what I'm going to do right now is literally just put a little vacuum cap on the inside of this, just to keep it from falling out, at least, while I'm testing it, see how it runs and everything. As it turns out, this little part was actually on the wrong side of this bracket. There's a little cutout right here that this fits comfortably into. I didn't notice that when I put that back together earlier. So now it lines up perfectly where it's supposed to on the rods. I'm just going to put the little locking clip on the other side, and then that'll be back together. And there you can see my little temporary solution to holding the accelerator rod in place. That's just a vacuum cap that fits tightly on the end. I would imagine that's going to fall off eventually after enough uses of the pedal here, which is why it's a temporary solution. So now all I have to do is hook up my my little gas can on the fender of the car and see how she runs. All right, I do not have my earbuds in, so you can hear the engine sounds better. So once again, since the car hasn't been run for a while, it'll crank a little bit before the fuel shows up with the carburetor, and it's an empty carburetor, brand new, so it has to fill up the carburetor fuel bowls too. So I'm just going to let it crank a little bit here to start with. A little bit more. Give it a few pumps here. Oh, look at that. Woo. That was pretty good. Better than I thought it would be. Okay. So the carburetor has default adjustments. I haven't touched it. My foot is not on the pedal. She's not dying, so that's a good sign. Already better than the old one was. Let's see what it looks like. Oh, I see a leak. I gotta shut this off. My gas is leaking right at the inlet there. Oh man, it's really leaking. Holy crap. I'm not sure where it's leaking. I hope it's not leaking at the where my mechanic put the fitting in. It sure looks like it. Not leaking on this side anywhere. Oh boy, it's really leaking. That's not good. All right, I'm gonna check the tightness of those fittings before I try again. All right, it's running. What I did is I put a second washer over here. I'm not 100% certain that my mechanic did a perfect job, but the second washer seems to have plugged it up. And it's running real smooth. Oops, so happy about that. Choke works perfectly. Started right up, and it's running real smooth. I'll let it warm up a little bit before I see if I can do any adjusting, fine tuning. But at the moment, it's looking pretty good. Let's see what it sounds like at the back at the exhaust. Oh yeah, it actually sounds a lot better at the exhaust than it did with the old carburetor. Didn't realize that would make such a difference. And I can actually see the fuel level in those little sight glass right here. That's kind of cool. I've never seen that before. I don't know if you can see it, but you can kind of see it bouncing around in there. I'm very pleased. It's pretty smooth overall. At the side glass on this side. Pretty similar, I think. It turns out I still have an issue with the linkage. Even though I got a nice straight rod, it really works better on this lower hole, not that one up there, because it keeps the accelerator partly engaged. Down there it works fine with the pedal connected and all that, but there's no way really to secure it on the other side from that hole because it hits right in this area there. So I'm gonna have to figure out a solution for that. Um, I'm not exactly sure what to do at this point, but I'm going to keep working on it. So not out of the woods just yet. I'm going to put it in gear. I just want to see the speedometer work since I got the engine running and the brakes are working now. So I'm just curious what this will look like. As I put it in gear, got a good brake pedal, putting it in gear, it engaged. Now let's watch that speedometer. Look at it go. Isn't that cool? I love those speedometers. Okay. just a slight drag on the shoes. That'll probably settle down once it's been driven a few times with some hard rear brakes. See if my emergency brake stops it still. Yeah, I think it did. Uh, Not perfect. Maybe I need to tighten that a little bit more still, but those brakes certainly work. Oh, that was kind of noisy. Not sure what that was about. Huh. Oh, something I haven't checked yet is the gear oil level in the rear axle. I think that's where that noise is coming from. But anyway, nothing to worry about right now. I'm going to shut this off. I'm going to have to work on figuring out what to do about that linkage. But the carburetor itself works great. Idles very smooth. Let's see how she starts up here. Oh yeah, starts up immediately. Runs nice and smooth. I'm impressed.